Hello everyone, a very good afternoon to all of you. I am Priyanshi welcoming you all on behalf of Solar Quarter and First We Group to the second day of Western Africa Solar Week 2022. Hope you had a good time in networking with your peers today. We'll have those networking sessions after the panel discussions. Now it's time to start with today's conference. But before that, I take the pleasure to thank our platinum partner Jinko Solar for extending their immense support to organize this event. I request my team to play the sponsor videos.
Energy lays the foundation of civilization and gives wings to science and technology. Every progress made by humanity has been driven by the reimagination of energy. Now that our planet has come to the consensus on a more sustainable and low-carbon development model, clean energy, represented by solar energy, is now in the spotlight for the potential value it has to offer. Jinko Solar is a solar energy company dedicated to the R&D and manufacturing of photovoltaic products, as well as a provider of integrated clean energy solutions. The company fulfills its mission to optimize the energy portfolio and take responsibility for enabling a sustainable future, strives for world-class quality with Chinese efficiency, and empower a green future with innovation. We forge ahead with foresight. Throughout our 16 years of growth, we have remained true to our founding values, established ourselves in the industry, and stayed in step with the ever-changing market. We were the first to propose the idea of integrated production capacity. Investing in the sections with the most sustainable value in the industrial chain has helped us gain a competitive edge beyond cycles. Based in China, we have built our presence all across the world. Relying on our global sales network and after-sales service teams, we provide high-quality products and localized services to customers in over 160 countries and regions. We are present across all time zones on Earth. We strive to stay ahead of the curve. For many years, we have remained in top spot in PV shipment ranking with over 100 gigawatt module shipment around the world. We've been committed to scaling up new heights. As an innovative leader in China's strategic new industry, we are constantly exploring the possibilities of innovation and replicable applications, and consecutively broke the world record for efficiency 19 times. We are committed to energy transformation. We actively invest in the next generation of photovoltaic technology and explore multiple prospective fields, formulating an effective coordination among our R&D, manufacturing, and sales, ensuring first-time value conversion of innovation. Our hard work has paid off with remarkable results. As a major ruler setter in the industry, Jinko possesses a leading intellectual property system. It is a national enterprise technology center and national technological innovation demonstration enterprise. We keep improving until perfection and aspiring to be known for our supreme manufacturing quality. Relying on the advanced smart production line, we have realized informatization for the entire production process. Our modules have won the title of Best Performed for many years, helping Chinese products to gain global recognition. We always seek for a better future. We are constantly exploring the real-life application possibilities for the photovoltaic technology in a variety of fields, including architecture, transportation, production, and living. With the record high business performance, the ever expanding market share, and industry leading growth rate, Jinko Solar, which has landed on the star market, will take advantage of the national technology strategy to create a shared future with like-minded partners. Jinko Solar is honored to take on the glorious mission and opportunities by history to keep leading innovations, fulfilling our responsibilities, and protecting the environment, so as to compose a magnificent chapter dedicated to the photovoltaic industry. Empower a brighter future with solar.
Thank you, team, for playing the sponsor video. Now, let's begin with our today's presentation. I would like to invite Mr. Martins Arogi from KPMG Nigeria for the knowledge presentation. Welcome on the screen, sir. I would request you to please present your screen. Martin, sir, I guess you are on mute. Martin, sir, are you with us? I believe Martin sir is facing some technical issues. No problem, we'll move ahead with our panel discussion. Here, I would like to make a small announcement that attendees can post their questions in the Q&A box, and our panelists will answer those questions at the end of the panel discussion. Oh, that's great. We have Martin sir back with us, so we'll be having his presentation first. Please present your screen, sir. Martin sir, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm just trying to share my screen.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we can see it. Thank you. Please let me know if you need any assistance. I'll be happy to help you. Martin sir, I believe Martin sir is facing some technical issue. So, without any delay, let's begin with the second day of Western Africa Solar Week with an exciting and insightful panel discussion on rooftop solar, future advancements in project models, finance, and technology. And in the elite panel, we have with us Mr. Ikau from Deloitte, Ghana. He's also the moderator for today. Mr. Chidi Obike from Power Up Renewables, Ms. Omobola from Energy, Mr. Olu Arauke from Husk Power Systems Nigeria, Mr. Camillus Chukwama from PowerGen Renewable Energy, Mr. Kareem Gamache from SolarX. The session will be led by Mr. Akao, and I would request all the panelists, welcoming all the panelists on the screen and requesting Akao sir to please take it ahead.
Thank you, Pandey, for this introduction. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining this session. We are very glad to host you. And I look forward to a very enlightening panelist discussion. These are a team of experts from their various fields. So I am a Kwapia Kofi, a manager in the Deloitte Ghana consulting department and a solar PV expert. Before I open up, I will allow my panelists to briefly introduce themselves, something bit about their background and what they do. I'll start with Camelos.
All right. Thank you very much, Apia. I'm Camilos Chukuma by name, a project manager currently with Power Gen Renewable Energy. Over the years, I have way over 12 years experience in field operatives when it comes to renewable energy. I've worked with several companies before settling down for Power Gen Renewable Energy Company, where currently I am the project manager deploying most of both mini grid sites, CNI sites, and interconnected mini grid sites. Just in a cap summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Camelos. Can we hear from Chidi Obike?
Okay, good day. My name is Chidi Obike. I'm the founder and CEO of Power Up Renewables Limited. I'm a seasoned technology and business professional with over 70 years of experience in sales management, business management, and competitive growth of companies. So, over the years, we saw the great need and the suffering of our people, in Nigeria and across Africa, in power supply. So this informed my decision, to set up Power Up Renewables, which is greatly solving the problem of power supply, especially to the commercial and industrial sector in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidi. Can we hear from Omobola, if she's on the call? Hello, Miss Omobola.
Sir, she is not able to join us. You can proceed with the
Okay.
other panelist.
Okay, Miss Ngozi. Miss Ngozi Gloria.
We have Mr. Karim with us.
Okay.
Mr. Sioun.
Mr. Karim.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you see me?
Hello, Mr. Karim. Yes. Yes.
Yes. So just to introduce myself, I'm the CEO of a company called SolarX. We're based mainly in Franco, West Africa, pure CNI player. In our capital, we have E3 Capital and also FMO as an equity players. And voila, we are based out of Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Burkina mainly, but we can cover all the Sahel regions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sion. I think you are muted, so we are not hearing you. Hello, Mr. Sion, you are muted. Can you unmute? Hello, Mr. Sion.
I believe Ms. Sioun is facing some technical error. My team is trying to help him, so you can proceed with the panel discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we'll just take off with our discussion. Today we are discussing rooftop solar feature advancement in project models and technology. Interestingly, Africa suffers very, let me say, interesting dilemma of achieving carbon dioxide emission reduction, as well as increasing electricity access, with 600 million population of Africa not having access to electricity. We have only 2% of the Africa's installed energy currently being renewable energy. In 2021, in a study by PV Magazine, from what we know as PV panels with reducing panel trends, we realize increasing prices. And that was quite surprising. And the question we ask ourselves is this trend going to continue? We want to ask from our panelists today what their experience is in these technologies. We will start with Mr. Chidi Obike. Chidi Obike, in your experience as an entrepreneur um, deploying solar PV systems, what technology really works? Centralized, decentralized solar PV options, right? In the region of CNI and residential customers, what really works? Centralized or decentralized? And from your experience, who is really patronizing it? Is it CNI or residential customers, and why?
Okay, the main sector that patronizes solar power is actually on a big scale. It's actually the CNI sector, and they use
Okay.
they use the decentralized model, because in Nigeria the grid is not actually robust. Doesn't have enough capacity, to transmit large amounts of power from utility scale solar. So the model now is decentralized, whereby you come to a factory, you do an energy audit, find out their power consumption, and design a solar system that matches the power need of this factory, giving room for future expansion. So this is what we see for most CNI customers, not only factories, even large malls, things like universities also. So the decentralized model is the model to go, because it's actually quick to deploy, it's cheaper than deploying by utility scale, because you need to upgrade for Nigeria, you need to upgrade the grid, the transmission grid, currently, and make it smart to be able to handle the the solar power, the large scale solar power you're going to pump into the grid. So this is the method that actually works for now, in Nigeria. Going down the line, there's an energy transition plan to increase utility scale solar to like 30 megawatts by 20 utility scale solar by 10 megawatts by 2030. So, and this will need improvements in the grid. So that's like a long-term plan. But for now, it's actually decentralized solar. That is the way to go, and that's what we are seeing in the market.
Thank you, Chidi. Sion, can you tell us a bit about energy? Hello, Sion Osundera. Um, your microphone. Okay, so I will, Pande, can you kindly assist him as we move on? So, Camelis, you have been very much involved in installations. You have been actively involved in hands-on EPC, installing rooftop solar panels. From your experience, what are the top challenges in installing rooftop solars? And how is technology helping to address these challenges?
All right. Thanks once again, Apia, and thank you for the question. So clearly, when it comes to roof installations, there is a lot of challenges that are posed towards installing such projects. There are so many, as much as there are different roofing profiles and um, corrugates, more or less. There are different challenges that are posed to installers when it comes to that. In Nigeria, specifically, we have various classes of roofing sheets, and this roofing sheets finishing is as a result of how robust the owner is. So most factory basically use rafters and metallic beams for their roofing sheets. And at the end of the day, they use aluminium to actually coat the roof. So such aluminium has minimal challenges compared to zinc sheet, asbestos, concrete, and other kind of roofing corrugates as well. So when it comes to, if we want to sectionalize the challenges we're facing, we need to firstly define a particular roof. Then I can list as many challenges that we face when it comes to that. Typical example, asbestos, for example. Asbestos has always been the first roofing sheet that was introduced mostly in the 80s, and some of them are still existing up till now. So aging has caught up with them. And equally, because of the flexible nature of the asbestos sheet, it is very, very difficult, and it is very, very, let me put it that you actually need expertise, the required expertise that can actually function on the sheet. Not just everybody can get up there and install it because of fear of breaking through the roof and falling down. That's something of that nature, and equally causing leakage in the houses that you're actually installing this solar for. For mostly urbanized industries that are of late, that comes with recent structure, basically don't opt for asbestos. So the asbestos sheet is more like a red flag for most installers compared to aluminum sheet or any other roofing sheet. Then after asbestos, you have a zinc sheet, which is second to the bad kind of roofing sheet we experience on site. But the safest and the most uh, 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 easiest place to install is actually the concrete roofing sheet. Being why you aren't actually drilling, you deploy maybe like a ballast system, meaning that you're not drilling on the beats, you're just using a ballast to hold your racking hardwares and thereby installing your solar panel on it. So that part is actually safe. It has nothing to do with leakage or crack on the roof. It makes it much easier if it is available. But if it's not available and you have basically your aluminum sheet, which is for me is always the best, they have several mounting kits that fit into it. You have the racking hardwares that you don't need to drill on the roofing sheets at all. You just like clamp the corrugates of the roofing sheets. That exists as well. And you have the ones you can actually drill on the sheets down to the beams that is actually carrying the roofing sheet. That also exists. So each of them has a peculiar challenge that we face, especially ensuring that after your installation, there is no form of leakage of ingress, water ingress into the building, which is much critical for the installer. You aren't going to install a solar panel in a customer's residence and create more problem for him, if not solving a solution for him. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. I will follow up briefly, but before that, so just briefly to our audience, some just to continue with the ground rules. If you are not contributing, kindly put your microphone on mute, and then you can also drop your questions in the question box. As we get ready to the question section, I will pick those questions and ask the panelists on that. So, Camelos, have you had an instance where you've had to replace the entire roofing to be able to accommodate the rooftop solar PV? And how did that trade off in terms of affordability for the client?
Okay, thank you once again. Okay, I have an experience with such scenario. Basically, it was a residential client, not basically a big CNI, or it was just a residential home system, whereby during the technical assessment, we got up the roof, we saw the roof, it wasn't really in a good shape. We took good pictures. We came back. We inspected both the rafters beneath the roofing sheet. Basically, the roof was zinc sheet, the normal zinc sheet that is mostly deployed in based on that is in affordable rate. Majority of Nigerians can actually afford the zinc sheet. So, but it's not the best suited for solar system, and over time it start rusting because of degradation of water and all those stuff on it. So, at the stage, or rather at the time we inspected this roofing sheet, there are already tracks or tracks of leakages, of water leakages, and equally the beams are not, they have given way, they have been eaten up by termites, so they were not strong enough. So my recommendation was, I called the client, I explained to the client that yes, you need the solar solution to actually reduce your energy cost and have power around the clock. At the same time, installing this on your roof will create another hazardous environment for you, meaning that your roof may give way. The panel, the money you spent can actually be lost over an error on installing parts. So after explaining all this to him, I also engage a structural engineer to actually ascertain the weight we are putting on the panel. So the structural report that came back shows a clear evidence that we can actually put anything rather than just about 5 kg on top of that particular roof. Otherwise, it will become a menace, or rather a hazard awaiting to occur. So with that criteria, we're able to convince the client that the best option for us to go to is actually to overhaul the entire roof and have it replaced. The client was a bit skeptical in terms of cost, but over time, she approached a financial institute and got a loan that actually helped her to clear the roof. And immediately she got the roof replaced, we jumped into work and have this solar system deployed. And up to date, she hasn't really complained of having any issue of leakage on the roof. And happy customer, there you are.
So now, I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, so what it means that if the client had not opted for a rooftop solar PV, the client would not have benefited from that free consultancy on the status of his or her roofing. Without the panels, probably the person could have suffered some hazardous incidents with time, either through rainfall or through windstorms. I think that that is a good side by benefit of the solar PV installation. Now, the question is still on Camelos. At what time do you engage, or for which capacity, or when do you engage a structural engineer? When does it make sense?
Okay, the best time I usually involve a structural expert to actually ascertain the roof sheet is especially when I have conducted an assessment, physical assessment, and I am convinced that the structure cannot carry the weight of the entire solar system I've actually designed for. That's one. Then two, if it's a ground mount structure, obviously from the design part, I already engage a structural design to give him the total weight of my solar panel and the racking hardware and the height at which I want this actual solar system to be installed. So they in turn do what they call load calculation analysis across all the structure to know whether it is to actually size up the beams and the columns of the structures we intend to use. Um, Citing the typical example, there was a client under the current organization I work for. We deployed a system for an Ejebumushi, which is basically a ground mount. We installed roughly around 120 kilowatt peak carport in his compound. So apparently he has a roof, but his roof has different orientation, which limited the entire space that we can actually exploit. So the best approach to it is we looked at these things. Installing it in different orientation increases our cost because we need to start getting X amount of charge controller to actually face different string in order to accommodate all the slopes that the building already have. But this challenge is was actually gulped and swallowed by introducing a flatbed carport system, which basically just need a single MPPT that can harvest the entire thing with a single orientation. But notwithstanding, the entire weight of the panel and the racks were submitted by to the structural engineer, who in turn did a calculation ensuring that he has a right required number of beams and columns to support the weight, and at the same time counter the wind speed of that particular area, which is critical. So once we're able to get hold of all this information, the structural drawing comes out. With the structural drawing is now a simple of going to site and equally implementing what you have actually designed for and have it installed and commissioned.
Thank you, Camelis. I think I find this interesting. We'll certainly come back to this. Karim, with your experience in Mali, right? Generally, you will notice that the terrain in the sub-region is different from installing in Europe or in the West. And one, you have issues of theft of the solar PV panels, especially in quite deprived areas, and you also have high collection of dust on the panels. How are you deploying technology to address some of these challenges?
Voilà. The main issue where we are, especially in the Sahel region, is really the dust. On the south side, really, usually we're in the premises of the client, so it's not really a problem. Definitely, I'm in line with what was said about the roof quality and issues about leakage and water. This is a big concern, so I completely in line with what was said before. And also safety at height, working and training the workers for safety at height and not having any casualties. That's one of the big issues that we face. Now, the main issue where we are is the dust. Because when it's not the raining season, we only have 3 months of the raining season. The rest of the time, and especially in some of the industrial zone, we sometimes around the clients, the roads are not paved, and you have a lot of trucks and cars passing by. So if you don't do well your calculation, or that's one point, or if you immediately you will see a drop in the yields of your stations. So you have to multiply the number of intervention. That's an extra cost. You have to consume more water. That's also an extra cost. And of course, we monitor all our station online. So whenever we see that there is an issue, there's a team that goes on the field and fix it. But it's a problem, because at the end of the day, you're saving on power, but you're using more water. So it's still like when we see the scarcity of water these days. It's also something that we look at carefully. We try not to overuse water, or like to use it in a wise manner. Thank you.
Thank you. So Karim, so generally, is the customer getting value for these interventions?
Yes, of course, because he will the value comes from the station going back to standards. So actually, when there's dust, he's losing value. He's not getting the performance that he paid for. Voila. So definitely, you need to act fast, and sometimes it doesn't. Like, you cannot predict, because there could be a dust storm, or you can have like 1 or 2 days where it's very dusty, and then the third day, that's it. You start to see the yields of the solar station to go down.
What is your experience with high efficiency, larger models PV panels? Are they better suited for such environment?
Yes, for sure. That's definitely, we see much better yields, and we can definitely we see that. Sorry, apologies.
Okay, thank you. Is Olubak Osundira?
Olu is here. Olu's surname is
Excellent,
Aaron.
excellent.
How are you
Yes,
today, Becca? Apologies.
I'm doing great. Oh, it's good to have you back. It's good to have you
Yeah.
back. So, considering the high cost of storage batteries, right? How are these being funded in the sub-region, where we have quite, poor reliability of electricity supply, and you obviously do not have a choice than to include battery storage? How are these being funded?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, and very great question. Clients typically worry about cost in Africa or sub-Saharan Africa. Solar is still a nascent market. Its adaptability or acceptability is quite low, like in Asia and other more developed markets. And one of the things that affects the cost is storage. So depending on the client, that would also affect the storage need. For instance, If you are powering a school like we do, or a health center whose main power needs are in the daytime, storage need might not be as much, especially with the level of sun during the day. But if you are powering CNI, companies that do a lot of manufacturing at night, or people who need a lot of nighttime use, then storage becomes a hot topic, and storage is quite expensive. You know, depending on the type of storage, and technologies keep coming out every day. In funding this, there are basically three models that we've seen at Husk. We've seen clients who are able to afford to make an outright payment, meaning that they acquire the system by themselves on an outright basis, and then maybe say, I would have you maybe help me maintain it for a period of time. We've also seen clients who have said, no, we may not be able to make an outright purchase, but we can lease, go on a lease to own basis. We'll pay down payment, and then over time we'll spread the rest of the payments. Then, of course, there are people who say, no, we don't even want to be involved in the system itself. We just want to pay for power. In that case, you are now more or less like a distribution company, but you have an asset, right? And the asset would also have depreciation value and all of that stuff. So those are the three models depending on the client. But what we've seen is that the outright purchase, it could be like 10 to 20% of the market, because again, acceptability is still quite low. There are questions around, would the solar even work? Would it be able to power heavy operations, etc.? You know, and with time, with acceptability coming, and with what the oil markets are doing, I believe that clients will begin to then bear the cost, the upfront cost at some point. But for now, those are the three models. Now, it would be and different companies have different financing models to support clients. There are also financiers who are able to say, look, there's a client who has a need but doesn't have the funds. And then there are people like us at Husk who have the capability to make the installation, but we do not finance. We are not a bank, we're not a financier, but we do this best. We install and we maintain and we own and can operate the system. So it would be making a tripartite agreement between the customer, the financier, and ourselves. And then the financier finances the project, depending on the agreement with the client, maybe a lease to own power as a service, then they kind of own it, and then we are in there for maintaining. So those are the financing models we've seen. In the space where we operate, especially in rural CNI, smaller systems, 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt, maybe up to 20 kilowatt for schools, small SMEs, fashion houses, barbing salons, etc. They are able to also aggregate themselves and then find a way to fund this by themselves. So I'll stop there, but there are quite a few things around financing. But so it would be great for potential clients to understand that even though financing, the initial upfront costs seem to be very high, the cost over time in comparison with existing fields do not are much better, right? On a scale, you could easily see a 30% cost reduction once you install and begin to use a solar system that works, in comparison to maybe diesel or petrol generator. So, with that in mind, you would have to do a cost benefit analysis and then say, okay, I can do this or I cannot do that. What are the options for me? And, and things like that. And then the conversations can progress from there.
I think that's interesting, Olu. Probably finance is always the elephant in the room. What are
Yes,
the difficulties that exist with clients accessing affordable financing?
Yeah, so the difficulties will be, and look, in this part of the world, data is very, very touch and go, right? You will need data to make good credit decisions, especially if I was a financier, right? The large corporates don't have that challenge, unfortunately, right? Because they are large corporates, they have huge balance sheets, have done business for a long time, and everybody knows them. But the smaller companies who are like mom and pop shop, brick and mortar stores, one man business could have that challenge. But with aggregation, maybe if you go to a trade association that is kind of government registered, it gives you a bit of a more leverage. But and that the challenges, one other challenge would also be availability of funders in certain spaces, right? Some funders want to be funding local large corporates because the credit risk is quite minimal. It's very understandable. If I fund a Coca-Cola, I know people will drink Coca-Cola for the next 50, 100 years, and then my funding can return with interest. But if, so sticking to those areas, yes, it's fine, it's their niche, but we need more funders, more local funders who can say, okay, we can begin to fund smaller shops, one man business who don't really have that credit risk rating levels of large corporates. And then for the businesses as well, they need to find a way to also build their selves. And when I mean that, it could be, when you're in business for a while, and over time you've shown to do business well and be sustainable with your business, it opens you up to a lot of financing, right? If you're also able to structure a business, make it shift away from a one-man family business, maybe put one or two qualified people in place to help you run the business. It also helps you attract financing so that you can do this. And also for the microfinance banks, we are seeing a few of them coming to the party, especially in this space where we exist, where we are more focused on rural MSMEs and peri-urban MSMEs. They are now saying, how can we fund these guys, being that they already do some sort of business with us? Remember, the microfinance banks are at that basic level where the market women, the barber shops in your neighborhood, and all of that, they go to. They already have business with them. Now it's a question of saying, look, can we aggregate a barbers association, for instance, and take them as one whole and go to the funder to say, look, this is a trade association registered by law, registered by government, registered with the government, and these are the members. And this will be an aggregated portfolio, which makes it easy for you to fund. And over time, you're dealing with one entity. You don't have to do with multiple barbers or fashion stores, etc. And it makes it easy. But the challenges will not go away. Each transaction will have its own peculiar challenge because of the parties involved. Funders would always want to see how far they can minimize their credit risk or counterparty risk, as it were. And then, of course, with equipment, but there are different ways to also look at it. If funders also want to fund equipment, then what kind of equipment financiers, what kind of OEMs would they want to go to? Would it be tier one, etc., and stuff like that. But the conversations and the challenges remain on a case by case basis. But with that, what we've seen is that there will always be a way to surmount these challenges, given that the world as it is now trending towards renewables. Sub-Saharan Africa cannot be left behind, especially with the amount of sun we have in these parts.
Oh, I mean, very interesting points you've made there. I think one strong takeaway is the collaboration, the associations.
Yes,
One, because most of these funding organizations have limits to which they will make their funds available. And
yes,
sometimes you have these customers quite far below those limits. And I think that's about the second or so time I've come across this strong recommendation. And I think it's a good takeaway from this discussion. I want to go back to Chidi. Chidi, with your experience as a entrepreneur deploying solar PV solutions, what is your practical experience assessing financing? Assessing financing.
Okay, now, like was mentioned earlier, there are like three main financing models. There's the There's the power purchase agreement (PPA). There's lease to own, and there's outright purchase. So for C&I customers, even residential customers, you see that local banks are not really keen on financing solar projects, especially when the solar projects are large, like for C&I, because of the long term, maybe 10-year, 15-year, 20-year tenor. So see, local banks are not really. It's very difficult getting finance from them. Now, for it's easier getting finance from international financiers to finance these types of projects, and also there are some energy service companies that finance these projects in house. That's another method. So looking at, for instance, if a factory wants to finance installation of solar power for power as a service, the international financier normally requires for some documentation to prove that the company is a stable company, is a profitable company, well run, to ensure that they can make payments for the power being supplied over the tenure of the agreement, which can be 15 years, 20-year agreement. And this process is normally stringent. A lot of documentations are required. So if the company, if the factory or CNI client is not well structured, it can be, and does not have all this documentation to show audited statements and the like to show profitability and sustainability over time, it's difficult to get this financing from international financiers. So that's actually has been our experience in this direction. So financing is still like a big a big, let's say, a big problem, but not insurmountable in the sector. It's like the most critical factor, for the sector, for the solar sector to really move very quickly. So this is what we have experienced.
I like
Thank
that.
you.
Certainly not insurmountable. Karim, what's your take on financing?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, sir. I just want to inform that Sion sir is back with us now, so you can also throw some
Excellent. Okay.
questions to him. Yes.
Okay. Sion. So maybe let me just let Karim address this, then we'll just go back to Sion. I want to end the discussion on the financing with Karim. Your take on the financing.
So just to start, is really SolarX is really a one-stop shop. So we provide financing directly to our clients. It's sitting on our balance sheet. So and here we are, because we were talking earlier about the big clients like the Coca-Colas. The thing is, these clients, first of all, their decision making is very there's a lot of competition, and they also have access to very cheap financing from the banks. So they will not take necessarily a PPA contract from you. In our zone area, I'm sure in East Africa or South Africa it's different, but in our zone it's not as obvious. What's nice about finance for us is that with smaller clients you can play around. So like sometimes you must cut down the cost on the EPC side, or so it gives you some leverage because you go from the savings of the clients, so you make sure he's making money out of your system, and it gives flexibility to yourself and also to your clients. So this is our takeaway. Delinquency for now, well, we're still a young company, so we haven't seen much. So this is good for the moment. The other one is definitely the main issue is access to data, relevant data. In our zone, it's not really available. So of course you have the financial statement, but they're not really reflect the activity always. So it's always sometimes about networking or knowing the owner, or seeing the mindsets about paying the invoices. So you must be very, very careful in who you deal with and how you deal, because when you're stuck into a problem, it's going to be very hard to get out of it. Voila, in a nutshell. But this is the beauty, this is what we are here for that. So it provides really a turnkey solution. It can be PPA, lease to own. It's really come to see a client and say, okay, it's a one-stop shop. You will find everything here from design, engineering, construction, O&M, and finance. And that's, I think, it's a big plus.
Thank you, Karim. Maybe let me just, I want to take this before I move to Sean. I believe there are a number of different backgrounds of audience listening to us. And I think one critical area, a number of them will be interested in how to access financing. Can you give me just 3 points? What should be the preparation? What should be the preparation? Hello, Karim. Hello, Karim.
Sorry, I didn't understood that the question was
No, so in
forwarded
just
to
3
me.
points, right?
Yes,
How should customers prepare to be able to successfully secure financing?
a good financial officer that can answer quickly to the questions. Transparency. Transparency is key. When we ask the question, we want to understand. So we want somebody who can really. And the third point would be reputational. So when their name is out there in the market, and you ask few questions to different parties, suppliers or bank or whatever, definitely your name out there says a lot. So about your capacity to pay and to pay on time your invoices. So, voilà, these are in a nutshell, what we look into that are not necessarily seen in the apologies for this in the financial statements.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sean. Welcome back to the session. Um, we've talked about solar and battery solutions. We've talked about rooftop solar. Another area I think will be quite interested to understand is solar diesel hybrid solutions. Are these offering cheaper alternatives to battery storage solutions? Hello, Mr. Sean. Hello. Okay, Carmelos, can you take this question for us? Hello, Mr. Sean. Can
Yes,
you?
I'm here.
Yes,
Could
yes, yes.
I had, if I get you correctly, you're asking if the hybrid system offers more
Exactly.
cheaper solution against the battery system for
Yeah,
CNI
exactly.
projects.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
The response to that answer is yes, because the capex is usually very smaller because of the reduced cost of your battery system. Sorry.
Okay, so whilst we wait for Mr. Sean to come back, I'll leave that question with him. So, Camelos, I'm interested in hearing from you. What is the most? Is Mr. Sean back? Okay, great, great. Please continue with your response.
Okay. Sorry, I just had a little
No,
distraction,
no, don't worry
but
about
that's
that.
fine.
Yeah.
So back to what I was saying. Like I said, the capex of having a solar system deployed with battery is usually very heavy compared to having a fuel safe system or more like a tie to a generator set system whereby you don't have to incur the cost of the batteries. So having that project, you have a lower capex. The only the only profitable thing there is this: you can go all out in your PV, you have zero storage cost, and you can as well, as far as you're looking at your generator set and you have the minimum base load of the generator set, you can actually install as much as solar capacity you want to install on your rooftop to be able to subdue the diesel spend of that particular infrastructure or the industry over a period of time as far as the sun is up. So for that kind of system, is cheaper and easier to actually execute compared to, and the design is pretty very straightforward compared to having a battery system where you are actually losing some extra amount of power due to the depleting of the battery and the charging of the battery. So it's not everything you generate you can actually harvest, or rather you can use. And you are only catering for a nighttime load when the sun is no longer available. But in times of a fuel safe system, you are basically putting everything you have generated into the system as it's coming up.
Okay, so as we are striving to achieve the net zero emission by 2050, how are we balancing this trade-off, affordability, access to electricity, and then reducing carbon dioxide emissions reduction from the diesel hybrid solutions?
Like I said earlier, Nigeria, for example, in rather Africa as a whole, is still a developing country, a developing continent per se, and we are still gearing towards harvesting this actually energy and being optimal when it comes to renewable industry and reducing the carbon emission, like you said. So at the moment, we know there are a lot of improvement that need to go down. With the little pieces being put together, I believe by the time by year 2030, we won't be there yet, but at least there will be a level playground for us to actually get there rapidly. Because over the years, there have been um, a massive dive into renewable industry, and there is a whole lot of changes. Solar being accepted on daily basis, unlike before, like the first speaker said, that does solar really work from hoist. So obviously, at this moment, people are embracing solar due to the high cost of diesel and the high cost of running on fuel and all this stuff. So obviously, Nigeria as a country is tilting towards having a standard renewable energy injected into our national grid. And once that happens, I think the sky will be the limit for renewable industry sector, and we'll be able to achieve that and equally subdue the more carbon emission we reduce the carbon emission we currently is injected into the atmosphere.
So, so till then, electricity access is the goal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry, Miss Camillus, I haven't heard what you said. What is your last statement?
Come again? I didn't get that.
I said, can you repeat your last statement? I didn't hear you well. My line was breaking.
Okay. The last comment I added towards uh, 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 accepting renewable energy globally, in fact, in the entire Africa, is looking at the trending things happening now. Previously, people don't believe that solar works because of our approach towards renewable energy in the past. But apparently now, a lot of people are coming up with an idea. Hey, I want to try it out. Let me try it out. I heard it works here. It should work for me. So the mindset is gradually changing. The initial mindset that um, the people that are not accepting this renewable energy sector are now changing. And I strongly believe that over time, Africa will embrace solar wholly, and we will now be able to harvest more and equally reduce the rate of emission, carbon CO2 emission that we currently is incurring in the atmosphere at the moment.
Thank
Very
you,
clear.
Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Karim. So we'll take one more question and then we'll switch to the presentation. And then after that, we will now go to the audience for any questions. So this will go to Camillus. Camillus, generally, we are seeing high efficiency in PV panels, larger PV sizes. And on the contrary, we are seeing higher prices. How is the inverter technology price trend also evolving?
Okay. Well, if I'm going to answer that question in the context of the country I am dwelling in, what plays a major role is the international financing. How do I put it? That's the dollar rate against naira rate. It plays a major role on the cost of these things, real life in Nigeria. So apparently, when you look at the technology advancements of inverter system, yes, there is a heavy advancement in terms of the type of inverter system that are being manufactured of late. Previously, we're actually looking at a straightforward system, but every industry that is under this particular product manufacturing has developed over time, and there are series of protections that are embedded into inverters these days. So is no longer a business as usual. So people are actually trying to make sure they become relevant because you have more inverter manufacturers coming up, springing up every day with sophisticated brand that are capable of withstanding certain type of having some measurable protection mechanism inbuilt that helps to actually sustain this power being given out to either the customer or into the grid also. Typical example, we know over the years, um, as the solar panels are increasing in sizes, so also some PV inverters and inverter manufacturers are increasing their system in terms of capacity to be able to accommodate the rapid increase in the sizes of these solar modules. Yes, we have modules that are gradually expanding. Typical example, in terms of solar panel, there have been some technology advancement in solar panel development that we have some solar panel coming with blocking diodes, which simply means that the generation of this solar panel becomes more efficient than before, which wasn't there before. So all this technology are building up to actually face the challenges that we initially used to have in solar industry, that hey, this solar doesn't work. So there have been a whole lot of innovation in terms of products across board, starting from the battery manufacturers in terms of their life cycle, depth of discharge, down to the inverter, and the efficiency of this inverter are also considered. Likewise, the power factor and the rest of these things, down to the solar modules. So obviously, across board, there has been a gradual developmental incremental slope that keep going up. Like I said earlier, um, uh, it will get to a point, the entire African continent, because we're actually at the center of the equator where we can harvest more. We embrace renewable energy, and the power, epilepsy power in Africa will become a thing of the past. That's my viewpoint on this.
No, that's very interesting. So, what generally means is that as technology is evolving, as prices are coming down, even though we inverter technology is becoming more sophisticated and efficient because of exchange rates, duties. We have the reverse in terms of price wars in Africa. We will continue that discussion, but for now we'll need to switch to the presentation, which we skipped earlier. To the audience, if you have any questions, kindly put it in the chat box. Once we finish the presentation, we'll come for those questions and we will continue with our discussion. So over to Pandey. Hello, Pandey.
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Great. So, Martin, sir, are you with us now? We can have your presentation and then we can move ahead with the questions by the audience.
Yes, I am. So if
Great.
you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay, sir, please present your screen.
Okay, let me share my screen.
Sure.
Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, sir, it's perfectly visible. Please continue with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today and to have this opportunity to make this presentation. I've had a fantastic time listening to the panelists speak about the issues and the challenges that we are facing as a region, from the uptake of renewable energy solutions. And we strongly believe that one of the key drivers for improved uptake will be government policy. And one of those government policy will be tax and fiscal incentives that are available. So this presentation primarily is to say what do we think can change from a government perspective, from a fiscal policy perspective, that will drive uptake of renewable energy solutions and then improve or increase the market size for the players that are here in this industry. So I'll talk about what the trends are in energy policy, energy markets, and technology. I'm not going to waste too much time there because most of the participants here are experts there. I'll talk about what the initiatives that we've seen across the continents that are shaping or driving uptake of renewable energy solutions. And then we'll then talk about finally what kind of policy from a fiscal perspective do we think needs to happen in this particular industry that will drive uptake, and then finally end with the way forward. So there is this quote that I think is very apt when we talk about this. It says we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. What this is primarily saying is that we need to then begin to think differently. There's been talk of moving to more sustainable sources of power for a number of years. It's been on for more than a decade now. However, we still haven't seen significant improvement. Today in Nigeria, other than hydro, there is no one on-grid renewable energy source of power. All our grid sources of power are either driven by gas or hydro. Like I said, if you take out hydro, and most of the hydro solutions have always been there since forever. Since 2014, I think that's about 8 years ago, was when we first entered into the heads of agreement with about 14 solar companies to enable them install and deploy solar power to the grid. It's 8 years now. None of those projects have reached financial close. At some point, we were optimistic that about three, four, five of them will be used to establish pilot schemes, and thereafter it will then be expanded to include the other outstanding projects. Now it doesn't even look like those pilot schemes will take off. So there is a problem, and we need to start thinking differently if we're thinking about solving that problem. So, what are the trends in energy policy, markets, and technology? Um, okay, according to a report by United States Export Council, in the last quarter of the 20th century, two primary key developments have served as catalysts for change in national energy policies of countries. Now, even though this report was talking about the world in general, there is no place where these two changes are more apt than in Africa and in the West African region. And what are those two changes? The first one is the focus around environmental protection, focus around having a more sustainable planet. Everywhere you go, in different parts of Nigeria and even the sub-region today, during the last month, we've had issues around flooding. There are cities in Nigeria that are trending on social media because floods are taking over roads, taking over houses, taking over communities, and it's not restricted to a particular region. I've seen pictures of places in the south, the southeast. I've seen pictures of places in the north also that have been taken over by flood. So there's a whole lot of focus around environmental protection and climate change. And then the second one is the increasing demand for electric energy. I think it's become pretty obvious to everybody that you cannot have or you cannot continue to create opportunities for the population of the region without necessarily, first of all, having in place sustainable energy supply. There is no way you can talk about industrialization, increased manufacturing, things that will typically lead to increased opportunities in terms of economic opportunities in any environment without necessarily having stable electric supply. So there is a larger demand for electric supply today, so much that government is unable to keep pace. So government monopolies are giving way across the sub-region for private players to begin to take a much more enhanced role in driving electricity supply because the demand is increasing. Now, when you combine both, an increased demand for electric energy, primarily driven by private sector players, and the focus on the environment, it is a tremendous opportunity for renewable energy sources and for renewable energy solutions across the sub-region. So there are also other benefits for having renewable energy solutions, despite not only the fact that it is fit for purpose and that is able to also meet an established demand and need that we have today. It's the long-term benefits. The long-term benefits. It's clean, it's low-cost components long-term compared to other sources. People have argued that the initial cost of of installation may be a lot higher for some renewable energy projects, but you don't look at initial cost when you are trying to do projects costs. You look at the life cycle of that project. I mean, you look at the life cycle of any renewable energy project compared to the life cycle of a fossil fuel project. It's clear that from a cost perspective, renewable energy projects provide long-term benefits. There's also the low cost of scaling. It's easy to continually scale renewable energy projects. Unlike what you have if you were having a geothermal project or a coal project, it's a lot more cost efficient to scale renewable energy project. And then finally, for diversity and price stability, the reason why it is called sustainable energy is because it's driven by resources that are available by virtue of the fact that we live, right, that we exist. The sun will always be here with us. Yes, you may have 1 or 2 days where, because of weather issues, it's not as sunny as you would like, but the sun is never going anywhere. The sun will never, you will hardly have uh, um, a time where you would say, oh, we're having sun scarcity. It's never going to happen. And because of that, you're able to plan long term, you're able to arrive at price stability. You're not talking about, oh, there's a Russian Ukraine war, and therefore the cost of fossil fuel has gone above the roof. And so I need to adjust tariffs. I need to have a conversation with my off-takers and say, hey, I can no longer continue to do this with you because it's become unsustainable. The cost of the sun will never increase. So there is price stability, there's fuel diversity, and it's sustainable. Again, if you look at what the world is talking about, is climate change and sustainability has become very key. The UN has identified climate change as the most significant threat that undermines the ability of all countries to achieve sustainable development. There is no way you can have sustainable development without taking into consideration the impact of climate change. I just talked about the flooding that we've seen across the sub-region over the past month. No matter how much investment you made, I was coming to the office this morning, and I heard about someone who had invested close to about $40 million, a company that had invested about $40 million in a rice farm somewhere up north in Nigeria, and all of a sudden, the entire farm has been flooded. The company is already estimating that they would have lost somewhere around $20 to $30 million of that investment because of flooding. So imagine, and the presenter said something that was pretty apt. The company is going to have to find a way to recover that cost from the little harvest that it will still be able to make. So what you will find is that the cost of rice would go a lot higher than what you would have had if they were able to recover all of their harvest, all of their plants. So it's clear that you cannot have sustainable development without necessarily addressing the impact of climate change. And one of the sure ways of doing that is ensuring that your sources of energy are renewable and they're sustainable and not fossil fuel driven. So there is a link between investment in renewable energy solutions and sustainable development. So, what are we doing across the continent in terms of the Africa renewable, in terms of driving uptake of renewable energy? Now, what we've first done here is say, let's look at renewable production of leading African countries and see how West Africa compares with the other parts of the continent. Now, in terms of leading African countries with capacity from hydropower, you will find that there are only two countries there. Now, in terms of actual production, because you could have installed capacity, and it's very different from the amount of energy you are able to get on a daily basis. You'll find maybe a bit more. So we then have about four more African countries get West African countries on that list. For wind, solar, and bioenergy, there is no single West African country there. So it tells us clearly that West Africa is playing catch up when it comes to investment in renewable energy capacity and renewable energy production. Now, this data is dated because it's from 2019, but I don't think much has changed in terms of how we compare with other regions of the continent. And that's why it's very essential that as a region, we begin to look at what we can do differently to ensure that we don't play second fiddle to other regions in Africa, talk less of when you then compare us to other parts of the world, because we're looking to catch up with other parts of the world, and we need to change something in terms of how we then address this issue. Okay, so there is the African Renewable Energy Initiative, which is driven by the African Union, which aims to achieve at least 300 gigawatts from renewable sources by 2030. Now, this is a very laudable objective, but like I said again, if we keep doing what we are doing in the same way and manner in which we are doing it, all of this would not go beyond the paper in which it has been crafted. So the focus of this is generally to say what needs to change. We've spoken a big game. We've spoken like people who have a very great grand plan. But in terms of what we have then done to achieve this plan is little or nothing. So the focus of this presentation is saying, what do we need to change? What needs to happen to be able to help us drive our ability to achieve this laudable objective? So these are renewable energy initiatives from across other African countries. Again, you will find that most of these are in Southern and East Africa, with just one from West Africa. So that brings me to the core of this. There's been a lot of talk around what would encourage people to drive or to take up renewable energy solutions. Now, what you will find, and I would like to give this background before I go into the details of this slide. What you will find in most developed countries is that what they are doing is to try and disincentivize investment in fossil fuel energy. So you have things like carbon tax, where if you're going to make an investment in fossil fuel energy, you would necessarily have to pay an additional cost. So the aim is to ensure that investment in renewable energy solutions become a lot more not economically friendly than investments in fossil fuel technology. So by disincentivizing investment in fossil fuel technology, they are looking to push people towards investing in renewable energy solutions. But Africa, especially the West African region, is in a unique position. One, it's a region that is very, very, very rich in fossil fuel. It's also a region where we also have extreme limitations in the amount of energy that we are able to generate on a daily basis compared to the need for energy. So we probably are not in a position to disincentivize any form of energy. As they say, a beggar cannot be a chooser. Beggars can be choosers. So if we are in a position where we have a severe lack, it's very difficult to disincentivize any source of energy. So for us and for governments across the continent, what we are doing is saying, whatever one you are willing to come and invest in, please come. We will take it. However, when we consider what I just put forward forward for us, we would see that long term, it is important and in our best interest we ensure that that investment, when it does come, are in renewable energy sources. So I'm not saying this incentivized investment in carbon. I'm saying or fossil fuel. I'm saying over incentivized investment in renewable energy solutions, and maybe that will drive the uptake. And so, what kind of ways can we do this? Now, I think the
Um,
first thing we need to do is say,
Martin sir, I'm so sorry to
what, do we,
interrupt you.
what are we
Can you
looking?
just wrap up a little fast? We also have to take the questions by the audience.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Okay, okay. So what exactly do we need to do to drive this? What are the specific incentives do we need to that we think will be able to drive investments in renewable energy? The first one is investment tax incentives. Now, you cannot expect people that are in a capital intensive business not to have significant investment tax incentives. When we started trying to encourage people to invest in oil and gas production in Nigeria, we had what we called the investment tax credits, where you could use the value of investment you made in fixed assets to compute a credit that you could use in reducing your tax. So what it did was that, in a sense, it made whatever investment you were making in capital assets a lot cheaper. Um, so we also have production tax incentives where we give you some incentive driven by the amount of energy you are able to produce. There is value added tax incentives. We have that in some West African countries already today, but it doesn't apply to power as a service. It's only on equipment. If I think it was someone mentioned it earlier on about some people saying, "Hey, I just want the power as a service. I'm not interested in ownership of the equipment. I should be able to also enjoy a tax incentive that makes it cheaper for me to engage someone to provide me power through renewable energy sources compared to power through normal grid fossil fuel sources. Tax holidays. Now we have tax holidays in Nigeria, but they are not structured for the industry that we currently have today. Now, all of my which is in this sector, it's very rare that you find somebody that achieves profitability within the first 3, 4, 5 years. And if you're not profitable, a tax holiday is of no use to you. So I have a tax holiday for 5 years. I don't make any profit for those 5 years. So of what use is a tax holiday? So we need to have a tax holiday system that is geared towards the peculiarities of the industry. Import duty reduction, today there's a lot of conversation around should they apply to solar panels, should they apply to other equipment as long as they're renewable, should they apply to if we couple all of the equipments together and all of that. I think there should be clarity around that. Then accelerated capital allowances. If you invest in a gas equipment today, you can claim all of your capital allowances in 1 year. So you can recover the cost of that equipment in 1 year from your tax returns. If you invest in renewable energy equipment in Nigeria today, you can only recover this over 4 years. Over 4 years. So that's an issue. We can't say that we're looking to incentivize investments in renewable energy and then have incentives that do not compare to what we have as incentives for fossil fuel. So that's something that we also need to look into again. I've talked about the tax on fossil fuel, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Now, so what's the way forward? And I'll round up here so that we can take questions. I think one of the things we need to urgently look at is what are the end user incentives. If I wanted to put a solar panel on my roof in my house, what would be the incentive for me? If I look at my own and say, hey, I no longer want to use diesel, I would rather invest in putting a solar panel on my roof. What's the incentive for me? What would drive me to make that decision? There is nothing today other than the fact that I care about the environment, or that I'm concerned about diesel costs. But it has to be more than that. So there's also the incentives for people making funds available. I think someone already mentioned it. Oh, I don't want to own assets. So I bring somebody to finance it. But the question is, what what's in it for that person. Why would that person put money in financing solar project rather than financing something else? So there also has to be an incentive for him to drive that investment, to drive him in making that decision. I've talked about the investment tax incentives, withholding tax exemption for renewable energy equipment. For the guys who sell this equipment, they suffer withholding tax. They're not making money. Meanwhile, their cash flow is being impacted because you can't. Somebody says, "Oh, the tax authorities will say to you that it's your money, it's just that we are holding it for you for whenever you make profits. But if it's going to take me 5 years and you are going to give me the same value that I suffer deduction on, then it makes no sense from the time value of money." I talked about power as a service and VAT exemptions. I'm not going to waste too much time on that. But I think the summary of all of this is that we need to look at what we need to change from a fiscal incentive perspective that will drive uptake of renewable energy equipment and renewable energy power on the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful presentation. It was really great. So, I would like to take up few questions from the audience. Ikaw, sir, would you like to choose few questions?
So thank you, Pandey. I think we have a question. I think it's a comment from Gerard. He says, "Hi, Chidi. I think in terms of financing, the main problem is not the lenders, but the governance of the project sponsors. We still have a serious governance issue in Africa. We still want to manage companies as we manage our families and expect it to be competitive. Due diligence to ensure bankability shall always be on the front line because the money used to finance projects has to be paid, and you must be sure before sponsoring or investing in a project." I think this is a very helpful comment. He said, "I've worked on many projects, finance projects for both lenders and developers, and understand different exigencies for projects qualify for funding." So there's a question from Shonaj. He said, "What has been the percentage price increase in PV inverters during 2022 compared to 2021? Any of the panelists want to take this? Hello, Olu. Do you want to speak to that? Probably maybe share some insights on the trends.
Yeah, so yeah, I could attempt it, but so what we've seen is maybe not on the inverter side, right? A lot of price increases on the inverter side. We've seen, of course, fluctuations with PV panels because of sometimes scarcity of input materials or raw materials, as it were. And of course, global supply chain truncations with COVID, with the war in Russia, Ukraine. We've seen those, but inverters have been, I would say, not as much as PVs in our experience. Again, because these are, I don't know why, but they haven't been a lot of fluctuations. They have been maybe at least 5, 10, 15%, but not as much as we've seen with inverters, which go up and, sorry, with PV panels, which go up and down every now.
Yeah, thank you, Olu. I think on this note, we'll be running up and take some closing remarks from our panelists. Martin, thank you very much for this insightful presentation. Certainly, we do need to have an ongoing discussion on the tax incentives and tax review around renewable energy installations. A case in Ghana, you have only duty-free on only solar PV panels, and you only benefit from the rest of the components only when it comes as a balance of system. But when it comes as different components, you will have to pay the tax duties on it. So I'll just go around the table. I'll start with Chidi. Chidi, if you can give me your closing remark.
Okay, thank you very much. I think for solar and renewable energy to really move quickly, in Nigeria and across the continent, as the speaker from KPMG mentioned, government backing is highly needed, to put in place policies that can spur that can give incentives to spur the uptake and investment in solar power, like especially tax breaks on the importation of the items. For most of the items are imported, so the import duty waivers and the likes is very important. Also, I see with with the increased use of solar, I see more clients, becoming more confident, of the capabilities of, of solar. So over time, the way telecommunication came into the continent, mobile telecoms, and spread as more people used it and saw how the durability is, I see the same situation playing out in solar, in the solar industry. So down the line, over the years, I believe that solar power will be the energy source of choice for the continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidi. Olu, comments from your end.
Really? Yeah, sorry. Apologies. I think I muted and unmuted myself at the same time. So, in terms of rooftop solar, right? Sub-Saharan Africa has the ingredients to ensure that most of our roofs literally have solar panels on them in the next few years. There is enough abundant sunshine. The solar irradiation levels across places like Nigeria, Ethiopia, Sudan, you name it, is one of some of the highest you could see across the world. And technology will keep advancing, right? A few years ago, PV panels were just what 100 watts, 2 meter by 2 meter, etc. Now you have PV panels of 600 watts, so almost going on 700 watts. That means you can do more with lesser number of panels on your roof. The financing would also keep coming in because the world is now on a trajectory where it has realized that we have to take care of ourselves. And I mean by ourselves, it is no more just profit. It's now, making profit, looking out for people who are on the planet, and then ensuring that the planet is much better than we met it when we leave it, right? So those advancements will continue. I think Sub-Saharan Africa is beginning to understand that the abundant resource it has from the sun has to be utilized in one way or another. And now businesses more than ever, because of the vagaries of the oil market, are now also gravitating towards alternative sources of power, where you see large corporates saying, no, we can't do diesel or petrol anymore. We'd rather take the sun. We're also seeing health centers, schools, I mean, religious organizations saying, no, look, you have to power our operations with the sun. More natural. Yes, the initial cost outlay is much higher, but over time, the cost benefit analysis shows that solar is at least 30% more, much cheaper than any other fossil fuel available right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidi. Martins, any comments from your end?
I believe
Okay,
there is not with us.
so yeah, so thank you very much for making time to hear us. I believe it's been a very insightful discussion. At least some quick takeaways for small scale CNI establishments. It's good to come together, form associations, go seek funding because most of these funding have limits where it becomes quite challenging to access this funding. We certainly need government to review some of these policies, but we need more discussion on what kind of policies. Generally, we need to look at policy changes, policy changes. Let's drill down deep. Martin has given some good insights on tax incentives, tax reviews that need to also come online. It's very heartwarming to know that consumers right now are embracing solar PV installations. Let's change this narrative by also having more entrepreneurs going into the manufacturing of PV panels, inverters in the sub-region to counter this effect of exchange rates, high prices, and see more uptake of renewable energy within the sub-region. Thank you very much. The name has been Echo. And thank you very much to all our panelists. You have been very insightful. We appreciate your time. I'll hand over to Pandey.
Thank Thank you very much, all our esteemed panelists, for this wonderful session, and very special thanks to Mr. Ikaw for superbly managing the session. So, with this, we have come to the end to the virtual event. Thank you for extending your time and support to the event. A special thanks to our partner, Jinko Solar, for extending their immense support. Till then, bye from our end and take care. We promise to come back with more such exciting topics very soon. Thank you, everyone.